Chapter 38:11. The hatred between them and Yi Qingfeng can't be eliminated by saying, I didn't kill him to the last one. And Yi Qingfeng and Yi Oxuan's attitude towards Shao Qi is also very strange. Big brother, what's wrong with you? Yun Ruhan recovered from Luo Yu's nervous call. Big brother, did they torture you? Are you hurt? Seeing the worry and concern in the young man's eyes, Yun Ruhan's eyebrows softened. I'm fine, don't worry, Shao Qi. After a pause, he slightly lowered his eyebrows and said, Tell me what happened between you and Yi Qingfeng from the beginning to the end. Luo Yu hurriedly sat up straight and recounted everything that had happened since she had woken up. At this moment, Mu Yan, who is far away in Liberty City, finally woke up from the struggle for ownership of the contract with the Avicii Tower. When Di Mingju left, he left a small world dedicated to cultivation on the floating island. Xiao Bao has been cultivating and consolidating his cultivation in the small world during this time. And Mu Yan and the people of the Xiaorao sect don't want him to get involved in danger. So, everything that happened during this time, including the power of resentment sealed in the Yin-Yang twin hearts, Luo Yunxiao's change of fate, and the battle between the four people and the Xiaorao sect. Xiao Bao doesn't know anything. But when Yi Qingfeng came, there was still a fluctuation in the small world. That was the impact of an enormous energy impact on the additional space that had been opened up. Just like the space of Mu Yan's Tian Mo Qin. Of course, her body can enter the space. But if the opponent is too strong, hiding in the space can't save her from danger. On the contrary, because of the collision of energy, she will fall into a dead end, and even lose the last chance to resist. Di Mingju has many small worlds. Some are huge and stable, and some are fragile and small. If it's those stable small worlds, Yi Qingfeng naturally can't affect them with his little cultivation. But the small worlds that can stay on the floating island are only small and inconspicuous, and can avoid the prying of the way of heaven. So, almost at the moment when Yi Qingfeng arrives at Liberty City, Xiao Bao opens his eyes from meditation. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The evil warding sword gently vibrates and jumps into his hand. The fat rabbit also raises its head and looks at its little master, eager to try. Bad guys are coming. Xiao Bao gripped the Bixia sword tightly and picked up the fat rabbit. With a sullen face, he said, We have to go out and help mother and martial uncles as soon as possible. Bixia. Yes. I haven't fought for a long time. My bones are about to rust. Oh no, I don't have any bones now. It's my sword that's about to rust. Young master, let's go and fuck them up. The fat rabbit wagged its tail and made a rumbling sound, indicating that it was doing the same. Just as Xiao Bao was about to leave the small world, suddenly, a red light flashed in front of his eyes. Then, his small body was wrapped up by something, and he was unable to move. Xiao Bao took a closer look and discovered that he was actually tied up by a piece of red silk. Moreover, the aura of this red silk was somewhat familiar. Seeing that little master was being attacked, the fat rabbit and Bixia sword immediately entered level 1 alert. The Bixia sword flew into the air, emitting a dazzling cold light as it shielded Xiao Bao. The fat rabbit's eyes flickered with a red light, and its body instantly became huge. It let out a beast-like roar. In front of the man, the beast, and the sword, a tall figure in snow-white clothes slowly appeared. Chapter 38:12. His icy blue eyes were filled with a hint of mockery as he looked at the struggling Xiao Bao. When the fat rabbit and Bai Xia saw him, they became even more violent. Xiao Bao's eyes brightened, and he couldn't help but call out, Uncle Wei ran. Li Wei Ran's face darkened. His smug smile, which seemed to have the pearl of wisdom in his hands, could no longer be maintained. He pursed his lips slightly, his eyes deep as he slowly walked in front of Xiao Bao. Little guy, who is your uncle? Xiao Bao raised his head to meet someone's dark eyes. There wasn't a trace of fear in his eyes. With a taut face, he said in all seriousness, Daddy's younger brother is Xiao Bao's uncle. So it could be deduced that whoever was Di Mingju's little brother was Xiao Bao's uncle. Li Wei Ren almost choked on a mouthful of blood. He gritted his teeth as he looked at Xiao Bao, his whole body emitting a cold, murderous aura. Bai Xie and the fat rabbit nervously rushed over to protect Xiaobao. Xiaobao was tied up by the red silk, but he didn't panic at all. Instead, he comforted his sword and spirit pet. Bai Xie, Bunny, you don't have to worry. Third uncle said that Uncle Wei Ran put a heart-piercing life-extending curse on me. If he hurts me, he'll be the one in pain. Uncle Wei Ran is a smart person. Why would he do such a stupid thing? Li Wei Ran sneered. Little guy, if I wanted to kill you, can the heart-piercing life-extending curse stop me? Xiao Bao looked up at him. Two pairs of almost identical eyes looking at each other. The baby asked in a crisp, childish voice. Then Uncle Wei Ran, do you want to kill Xiao Bao? Li Wei Ran. He really is very. He really hates Di Mingju's little brat. Li Wei Ran waved his hand with a cold face. The red silk that was originally tied to Xiao Bao disappeared without a trace. Xiao Bao moved his little arms and legs that were a little painful, his eyes full of hope as he looked at Li Wei Ran. Uncle Wei Ran, I'm going to help my mother now. Can you wait for me here? Li Wei Ran was frowning. He couldn't be more disgusted with this small world filled with Di Mingju's aura. When he heard Xiaobao's words, he sneered and suddenly reached out to grab Xiaobao by the collar, who was about to leave the small world. He was lifted into the air, like a chicken. Roar, roar, roar. The fat rabbit yelled and scurried forward. Let go of the little master. The Bishia's sword was the calmest. He said in an unperturbed tone, Don't worry, stupid rabbit. That guy may be a psycho, but I can tell that he doesn't mean master or boss Jun. He was the type of person who was upright in his words, commonly known as the Tsundere. With regards to Tsundere's actions, you should just take his words in reverse. Hearing Bai Xie's words, the fat rabbit really calmed down. Xiaobao seemed to be deep in thought. Tsundere? He felt that Uncle Bai Xie's description of Uncle Wei Ran was spot on. Luckily, Li Wei Ran couldn't hear Bai Xie's words. Otherwise, he would have strangled the little kid in his arms. Xiaobao raised his head and looked at Li Wei Ran. Uncle Wei Ran, let me go. There are powerful enemies coming. I have to go out and help my mother. Li Wei Ran's lips curled into a smile. You? Are you sure you're not holding us back? Xiaobao's little face turned red, and he was about to retort. His vision blurred, and when he came back to his senses, he found that he was no longer in his father's small world. He was at the top of Six Stars Tower. Mother! Seeing Mu Yan sitting cross-legged not far away, Xiaobao shouted, and was about to rush over. Chapter 38-13. Li Wei Ran didn't stop him. He just stood at the side with a smirk, sizing up the surrounding array, and Luo Yunxiao, who was in the middle of it. He couldn't help but slowly retract the sneer on his face. Li Wei Ran's face revealed a look of disbelief and doubt. He took a step forward, wanting to get closer to Luo Yunxiao to get a better look. Qi-wen, who was at the side, immediately rushed out and glared at him. Her entire body was filled with vigilance. But it couldn't help but say, Young man, you're really handsome. Red lips, white teeth, a face like jade. It makes people want to take a whiff. Although you're still lacking compared to my master, I'm about to be charmed by your beauty. Li Wei Ran retracted his gaze, his cold eyes landing on this demon beast that wasn't afraid of death. His lips slowly curled into a cold smile. Qi-wen's scales immediately stood on end, and she took a few steps back. What are you doing? Let me tell you, I, Qi-wen, am a descendant of a dragon. My master is very powerful. If you dare to act rashly, you're dead. Master, save me. Mei Yan, save me. Baby Bei, save me. Xiaobao stopped when he was about to rush to Mu Yan's side. Because he saw Mu Yan's pale face, the bloodstains on her body, and the sweat that flowed down her forehead like water. Mother is having a hard time, and it should be a crucial moment right now. If he rushed over, it was very likely that he would disturb Mother and even cause her to go berserk. Xiaobao stopped where he was, his heart burning with anxiety. But Qi-wen was still making noise in his ear. His little face couldn't help but sink. Qi-wen, shut up. Don't disturb Mother and Grandmaster. Then he looked at Li Weiran. Uncle Weiran, you're already so old. Don't lower yourself to the level of Grandmaster's little spiritual pet. It's too childish. The smile on Li Weiran's face deepened, and he said sinisterly, Little guy, do you really think that I won't make a move on you? At this time, Mu Yan suddenly let out a pained groan. Then she spat out a mouthful of blood. A dazzling white light emitted from her body, as if it was going to completely swallow her up. Mother! Xiaobao cried out, and was about to rush over. However, Li Weiran grabbed his collar and threw him to the side. He quickly arrives behind Mayan, his hands supporting her temples. A black and red flame emerged from his palm and intertwined with the white light. Xiaobao stared fixedly at the side. His two little hands were tightly clenched into fists, and his palms were covered in cold sweat. The entire 6 Stars Pagoda fell silent. Even Qi Wen obediently stayed at the side, not daring to move. Time passed slowly. Outside, Yiqing Feng kicked up a storm, even taking Yun Ruhan and Luo Yu with him. But little Bao, who was in the pagoda, couldn't care less. He didn't notice anything, because right now, Mayan is in a life-and-death situation. He didn't know what had happened to his mother and martial granduncle. But just by looking at the sweat on Li Weiran's forehead, one could tell that this matter was extremely dangerous. Xiaobao's entire mind is focused on Mu Yan. He was afraid that his mother and martial granduncle would be in danger. He was also afraid that Uncle Weiran would be hurt in order to save his mother.
Boom.
The entire 6 Stars Pagoda shook violently. Immediately after, Mu Yan suddenly opened his eyes and moved his body that was almost frozen stiff. Chapter 38:14. The originally dried-up Dantian slowly surges again. Mu Yan detects the Avicii Tower in the space and lets out a long sigh of relief. She really didn't expect it. They are both demon god tools, but it was so easy for her to subdue the chaotic tower. Moreover, the Avicii Tower clearly has Qi Huang's help, and it consumed a lot of its energy to seal the yin-yang twin hearts. In the end, when the contract was finally concluded and the master-slave relationship was decided, she almost failed miserably. She also didn't expect that the demon god tool, the Avicii Tower, would have its own consciousness. Although it is not a tool spirit, it is extremely sinister and cunning. Under Qi Huang's suppression, the fake will of the Avicii Tower has already been subdued. However, when the master-slave contract was finally concluded, it suddenly rebelled and wanted to seize the position of the main body of the contract. In other words, once such a contract is concluded successfully, Mu Yan will instead become a servant of a demon god tool. From being unable to control at the beginning, her body will be involuntarily ordered around. In the end, her soul will even be swallowed by a demon god tool, and she will be forced to become a tool spirit. Qi Huang is also burning with anxiety when he realizes the conspiracy of the Avicii Tower in the space. However, once the contract is formed, he can only come out of the space of the Tian Mo Qin if he wants to intervene, and his existence cannot be exposed in front of others. This makes Qi Huang seethe with anger in the space, so much that he can't help but expose his tracks. Fortunately, at the critical moment, another strange but extremely useful energy was injected, suppressing the restless Avicii Tower, allowing Mu Yan to regain the initiative. The contract is concluded successfully, and Mu Yan breathes a sigh of relief. Qi Huang also sits down on the grass. He glances at Li Weiran outside the space. This time, he doesn't even say, "Pretty boy." Nyangqin. Xiaobao throws himself into Mu Yan's arms. When he raises his head, his eyes can be seen to be red. Nyangqin, what are you doing? Why didn't you call Xiaobao? Is Xiaobao that useless? The child, who never likes to cry and wouldn't act like a spoiled child, shows such an aggrieved and sad expression. It makes Mu Yan's heart ache. She held Xiaobao's face, kissed his forehead, and said softly, "Of course not. Xiaobao is so amazing. How could he be useless? It's just that your martial granduncle is injured, and we want to help him. Xiaobao, you're in secluded cultivation, so we didn't call you." Xiao Bao pursed his lips as he looked at Luo Yunxiao and asked softly, "Is Marshal Granduncle all right now?" Mayan's gaze also falls on Luo Yunxiao. The young man was sitting cross-legged, surrounded by a faint glow. The yin-yang twin hearts had already disappeared. He didn't know if it had fused with Luo Yunxiao's body. When she was fighting with the Avicii Tower for the ownership, she also vaguely heard Qi Wen's words. Little Uncle Master was attempting to defy the heavens and change his fate. If he succeeded, he would be reborn. If he failed, he might be consigned to eternal damnation. Muyan took a deep breath, then looked at Xiao Bao and nodded. A faint smile appeared on her face. "It will be fine. It will definitely be fine." Little Ant Master deserved the best ending. Defy the heavens and change my fate? Huh? I didn't expect there to be such a naive person in the world who really believes that fate can be changed. The slightly mocking voice pulled Mayan back from her thoughts. Qi Wen was furious. "Pretty boy, even if you're good-looking, you're not allowed to talk nonsense. My master has prepared for so many years, so many years. How could he not succeed?" Chapter 38:15. The mockery on Li Weiron's face deepened, but he didn't have time to speak. Muyan interrupted him. "Thank you for just now." Li Weiron immediately retracted his attention from Luo Yunxiao. He looked at Mu Yan with a burning gaze, and his lips curled into a faint smile. "So, Mu Yan, are you going to repay me with your body?" Mu Yan ignored his words and asked in confusion. "Diming Ju said you went to investigate the truth. Why did you suddenly return to the floating island? Is there something wrong?" Li Weiron's face darkened. "Who said I went to investigate the truth? What I saw and heard is the truth." Mu Yan calmly interrupts him. "So, what's the matter with you coming back?" Suddenly, she thought of something, looked at Xiao Bao, and came to a sudden realization. "Oh, I remember now. A few days ago, Xiao Bao was impatient and greedy, so he opened the high-level test in the small world and got injured. Because of the heart-piercing life-extending curse, you felt that Xiao Bao was in danger, so you came to take a look?" Li Weiron's face stiffened, as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't say a word. His face was so dark that it could drip water. Muyan held back her laughter and said gently, "Xiao Bao is lucky to have an uncle like you to protect him." Xiao Bao walked to Li Weiron's side, grabbed his clothes, and looked up at him. "Uncle Weiran, so you care about Xiao Bao this much?" Li Weiron's red lips moved, and he spat out a word. "Scram." Xiao Bao, however, was not annoyed at all. Instead, he nodded seriously and said, "I understand. Uncle Weiran is exactly what Bai Xie said about being at Sundra. You say get lost, but what you really mean is I care about you very much." Uft. Muyan couldn't help but laugh out loud. Li Weiran was about to go crazy and kill people. She coughed and was about to speak, but there was a sudden noise outside. "The Avicii Pagoda can't fall into Yi Qingfeng's hands." "The Avicii Pagoda can't fall into Yi Qingfeng's hands, so what you're saying is that Xiao Yao Sek's senior brother and junior brother deserve to die." Mu Yan's face changed. "Xiao Bao, stay here and watch over Marshal Granduncle. Mother will go out and take a look." A hint of hesitation appeared on Xiao Bao's face, but he still nodded in the end. The water spat out by Yi Qingfeng's water qilin had already receded, but Liberty City was still in a mess. Many houses were destroyed by the flood. There were also some people whose belongings had been washed out by the flood and were scattered all over the ground. Even a large part of the Heaven's End cliff had collapsed. It buried more than half of the training grounds in the city. None of the 100,000 free unfettered army soldiers died, but many of them were injured by Yi Qingfeng and the water qilin's pressure and were currently receiving treatment. The entire Liberty City was in chaos, and everyone was in a state of panic. However, at this moment, most people didn't have the time to repair their own homes or recall Yi Qingfeng's terrifying strength with palpitations. The devastated square was filled with people. Some of them were residents of Liberty City. However, there were also some who wore the uniforms of other sections. From time to time came the sound of argument and noise from inside. We've said that as long as General Wei is in Liberty City, You will inevitably become a thorn in Yi Qingfeng's side, but you didn't listen. Now you've finally suffered, haven't you? Alas, City Lord Jun is still too young. If you had agreed to join our demon-slaying alliance from the beginning, when Yi Qingfeng and his lackeys came to us today, our 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects would have been on the same side as Liberty City, and you wouldn't have ended up like this. Chapter 38:16. Hehe. Some people are very arrogant. At the beginning, we came to them out of goodwill, hoping to cooperate with Liberty City. We even offered the position of the leader of the Fiend-Slaying Alliance to them. We didn't expect that someone would bite the hand that fed on our kindness and drive us out directly. Hehe. At the moment, many old acquaintances of Liberty City were standing in the square. Yi Xuesong, the leader of the Luoyun Alliance. Xiang Yunzhou, the leader of the Sacred Heaven Alliance. Qi Menghui, the leader of the Clear Sky Sect. Enrich, the leader of the Spirit Gathering City. Beitang Zhan, the leader of the Beitang family. There were also a few famous people who had never been to Liberty City for medical treatment before. For example, Lu Qianyuan, the leader of the Life League. For example, Yu Haizhu, the leader of the Snow Treading Palace. Qi Menghui and his companions had been refused at the door of Liberty City and left in exasperation. After they returned, the elite disciples and elders of their sects died of illnesses, which caused them heavy losses. In the following period, more patients appeared in their sects one after another. They had disguised those patients as rogue cultivators and sent them to Liberty City secretly. They tried to deceive the disciples of their sects so that they could be treated, but they would not have to lower their heads and lose face. Unexpectedly, they were soon seen through by the people of Liberty City and thrown out. As the reputation of the Enchantress of Medicine Jun Mayan grew, as more and more people came to Liberty City for medical treatment, many powerless rogue cultivators got elixirs or talismans that could relieve their pain. However, only a few major sects and clans were completely abandoned by Liberty City and had no way of entering. During this period, the people of the major sects and families like the Clear Sky sect had been ridiculed and mocked a lot. The disciples of the sects and families could barely raise their heads outside. They were also deeply afraid that they would get the same terminal illness, but have no way to ask for help. For a moment, the entire sects and families were in a state of panic. Qi Menghui and his companions were used to being high and mighty. Now that they were threatened in such a way, and their dignity was trampled on, how could they not be angry and hateful? Now they heard that Yi Qingfeng had attacked Liberty City and caused heavy losses. Those people were gloating and excited. So, they rushed over as soon as they got the news. Of course, some people were sincerely worried. For example, the Alliance Master of Luoyun Alliance, Yi Xuesong, and the Alliance Master of Sacred Heaven Alliance, Xiang Yunzhou. But when Yi Xuesong and the others heard that the Avicii Pagoda was in Jun Mayan's hands, and that they wanted to use the Avicii Pagoda to exchange with Yi Qingfeng, their faces changed greatly, and they repeatedly stopped them. To Long Yuma and the rest, what was a tower? Without a doubt, the safety of eldest senior brother and youngest junior brother was much more important. Yi Xuesong forbade them from using the Avicii Pagoda to exchange for Yun Ruhan and Luoyu's safety. How could Lung Yuma and the others tolerate this? The two sides immediately started arguing. As for the content of the dispute, it also deviated from the direction of the Clear Sky sect people's resentment. Beitang Zhan put on a hypocritical expression as he looked at Liberty City, which had mostly collapsed. He sighed and said, "All right, let's stop talking. After this battle, I'm sure the juniors of Liberty City should have realized that dealing with Yi Qingfeng is definitely not something that can be accomplished by these inexperienced brats." Patriarch Beitang is right. Yi Xuesong's face was slightly pale. He stroked his beard and sighed. Instead of scolding each other, why don't we sit down and discuss how to deal with Yi Qingfeng? Chapter 38:17. Then, he looked at Lung Yuma and the others and said gently, "I know you're worried about the safety of young Master Yun and young Master Lan, but I've heard that they're descendants of the Lan Empire's royal family. Even if Yi Qingfeng has the guts, he won't do anything to them. We just need to make a long-term plan and work together to kill Yi Qingfeng and save the floating island. By then, young Master Yun and the others will be safe. Yi Xuesong's words made the clan leaders and elders nod. Alliance Master Yi is wise. Our top priority now is to kill the evil, get rid of the Emperor's side, and return peace to the floating island. We can deal with other grievances later. Yi Xuesong coughed lightly to attract everyone's attention. Then, he let out a long sigh. Killing Yi Qingfeng is easier said than done. His current cultivation has far surpassed everyone on this floating island. Even if the 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects work together, we might have a chance to win, but we'll definitely suffer heavy casualties. Unless what? Yi Xuesong raised his head with a deep look in his eyes. He said slowly, the ancestors of the Luoyun Alliance, the Sacred Heaven Alliance, and the Life Alliance are still alive and well. Their cultivation has reached half of the Golden Body Realm, and they are only 1 step away from ascending. The 3 ancestors haven't left because they predicted that the floating island would face today's calamity. They can't leave their descendants and the thousands of living beings on the floating island alone. Hearing Yi Xuesong's words, everyone present, including Wei Mian, showed a shocked expression. Alliance Master Yi, are you talking about the 3 legendary figures who used to follow Beast God Lan Xiaozi? Yi Xuesong nodded. Yes. Oh my god. The 3 ancestors have lived for tens of thousands of years? They're still on the floating island? Xiang Yunzhou also nodded. I've heard my grandfather mention that there's an ancestor of the Xiang clan who has been cultivating in seclusion to protect the Sacred Heaven Alliance. But I've never seen him. Lu Qianyuan, the leader of the Life League, also confirmed Yi Xuesong's words. The existence of our ancestor is a secret in the Life League. However, we, the leaders of the Life League, are informed the moment we become the successors. Hearing this, Beit Engzhan and the others were extremely excited. With the help of the 3 ancestors, do we still need to worry about not being able to get rid of the evil? So, what if he was Yi Qingfeng? Don't tell me he can withstand the combined attacks of the 3 ancestors? Yi Xuesong frowned and shook his head. That's not the case. The 3 ancestors were strong, but Yi Qingfeng was not easy to deal with either. In fact, my ancestor speculates that this person may have lived for more than 10,000 years and has cultivated some demonic arts. If he obtains the heaven-piercing halberd, even if the 3 ancestors joined forces, they would still not be a match for him. What? How could this be? State Preceptor. Where did Yi Qingfeng come from? How can he be so powerful? Everyone in the square was horrified as they discussed among themselves. Yi Qingfeng had suddenly appeared in recent decades. No one knew where he came from, and no one knew what his background was. His surname was Yi, but he seemed to have nothing to do with the Yi clan of the 6 great clans. Even the Yi clan's clan master and ancestor were in his hands. Most people on the floating island only knew that the state preceptor of the Lan clan, Yi Qingfeng, was ruthless, decisive, and could cover the sky with one hand. Chapter 38:18. Most of the people on the floating island only knew that Yi Qingfeng, the imperial advisor of the Lan family, was ruthless and decisive. But they knew nothing about his background. Beit Engzhan gnashed his teeth and said, "What imperial advisor? What Yi Qingfeng? I've heard my father say that he's just a lowly." Halfway through his words, he realized something and stopped abruptly. And Lechi, the head of the Yin family, quickly followed up. Alliance Master Yi, even the 3 ancestors together, may not be able to defeat Yi Qingfeng. Then, does our evil-killing alliance still have a chance to win? Yes. Yi Xuesong nodded solemnly, then looked at Leng Yuma and the others with shining eyes. 10,000 years ago, the 3 ancestors were good friends who fought side by side. They were fellow disciples of the same sect. They once practiced a set of cultivation method called the 8 trigrams demon-slaying seal. As long as they use this cultivation method at the same time, the strength of the 3 ancestors will increase by several times in an instant. At that time, no matter how powerful Yi Qingfeng's demonic attack is, so what? He will still die under the hands of the ancestors. However, in order to activate the 8 trigrams demon-slaying seal, We need a very important magic treasure as a primer. Chu Moli couldn't help but smile and said slowly, "If I'm not wrong, this magic treasure should be the Avicii Pagoda, right?" "Yes." Ishuesong's expression was a little excited, his hands unconsciously clenched tightly, and his voice also raised an octave. With the Avicii Pagoda as a guide, and the three ancestors working together to display the 8-trigram devil-slaying seal, we can kill the evil Yi Qingfeng with the smallest price and save all the creatures on the floating island. Chu Moli smiled and said, "Alliance Master Yi, are you so sure that we have the Avicii Pagoda? Or, I should ask in a different way." Yi Qingfeng came and went in less than a quarter of an hour. Alliance Master Yi and everyone here already knew. They even knew that Yi Qingfeng wanted us to use the Avicii Pagoda to exchange for people. But when we fought with Yi Asian and the other three for several hours, no one received the news and came to help. He raised his eyes slightly, looked at Ishuesong, then glanced at the leaders of the big sects and families and said with a smile, "Alliance Master Yi, do you think this is strange?" Ishuesong's face stiffened, and his expression became extremely awkward. Qi Menghui and the others were also looking around. Even Xiang Yunzhou's face was completely red, his expression ashamed. He wanted to say something but couldn't. Gu Feipeng of the Micro-Moon Pavilion, on the other hand, seemed to have been enlightened. He suddenly shouted, "I got it. Those sons of bitches have been spying on Liberty City since a long time ago." When Yi Qingfeng's subordinates came down, they didn't have the guts to come out. After they left, they wanted to get a share of the spoils. TSK, TSK, TSK. Sinister, truly too sinister. That's why I hate dealing with sanctimonious hypocrites like you the most. His words were so loud that half of the people in Liberty City could hear it clearly. For a moment, the faces of Ishuesong and the others alternated between green and white, and they were so gloomy that it could drip water. Unfortunately, he could not refute it. In the end, it was Baitang Zhan who snapped, "Is there any meaning in pursuing this matter now? Isn't the most important thing to hand over the Avicii Pagoda to the three ancestors and let them kill Yi Qingfeng?" That's right. The floating island is on the brink of life and death. Could it be that Liberty City still wants to fuss over such a trivial matter? Do you really have to wait until Yi Qingfeng slaughters the entire city before you know what fear is? Chapter 38:19. What about City Lord June? Is the Avicii Tower in her hands? Hand it over to Alliance Master Yi as soon as possible. Ling Yuxing sneered and said, "If Yi Qingfeng hears the news of handing over the Avicii Tower to you, have you thought about what he will do to our eldest senior brother and junior brother?" And Lechi said, "In the face of the survival of the floating island and thousands of creatures, personal gains and losses and life and death can only be put aside." Yes. After handing over the Avicii Tower to Yi Qingfeng, his strength has improved by leaps and bounds. Who can stop his atrocities? How can we avenge General Wei's death? What's more, you and your junior brother may not die. Lung Yuma suddenly raised the red lotus soul-stealing saber in her hand and slashed forward. With a crashing sound, the earth cracked and flames surged. She looked at everyone present sarcastically and sneered, "I don't want to say get lost twice." As soon as she said that, not to mention Qi Menghui and Baitang Zhan, even Yi Shuesong and Liu Qianyuan, the leader of the Life Alliance, looked extremely gloomy. Xiang Yunzhou's face flashed with worry. He hurriedly and carefully pulled Lung Yuma's sleeve. "Miss Yuma, now that Liberty City has suffered heavy losses, it's really not suitable to be enemies with too many people. Be careful with your words. Be careful with your words." Lung Yuma glared at him, but before she could say, "Be careful with my words," Ling Yuxing had already followed her words and sneered, "There's nothing to be careful with. There's no need to say such high-sounding nonsense. Do you want to take advantage of the situation or add insult to injury? Just say it." Yi Shuesong was so angry that his beard was crooked. But he still took a deep breath and said slowly, "We don't mean to add insult to injury. To deal with evil, we should help each other. We don't even want to occupy the Avicii Tower, we just want to borrow it." Before he could finish his words, Lung Yuma had already mercilessly interrupted him. I won't lend it to you. Yi Shuesong's chest suddenly heaved up and down, and the anger on his face could no longer be concealed. Beidangjian directly took out his magic treasure and said sternly, It's just a small town. Do you really think you're something? Today you have to hand over the Avicii Pagoda, whether you want to or not. Swish, swish, swish. Beidangjian's words were like a signal. For a moment, all the people from the various sects took out their weapons. The 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects on the floating island had deep foundations to begin with. This time, those who came were the patriarchs, sect leaders, and elders of the various clans and sections. The cultivation of these people could be imagined. Any one of them could destroy a small town or a small sect with a wave of their hand. At this moment, they bared their fangs at Liberty City. Wei Mian, Butcher, and the rest all revealed looks of panic. The most powerful cultivators of the Xiao Yao sect were either injured or had left. Even if they had an army of 100,000, how could they resist the joint attack of the 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects? Beidangjian, are you going to hand over the Avicii Tower or not? Qi Menghui, if you continue to be stubborn, don't blame us for hitting you when you are down. Boom. Before the 2 of them could finish their threats, a sudden rumble exploded in everyone's ears. Then, a behemoth descended from the sky. Awe! Sand and dust were flying, and the earth was shaking. Shrill screams resounded in the square. But everyone was dumbfounded. What happened just now? Alluring Enchantress, heaven-defying baby black-bellied dad, please collect. Chapter 38:20. The ones who screamed seemed to be Beidangjian, the head of the Beidang family, and Qi Menghui, the head of the Clear Sky sect. But both of them were experts at the peak of the sea-splitting realm. How could it let out such a shrill cry, like a pig being slaughtered? The dust slowly dispersed, and the crowd finally saw the scene in front of them. On the square of Liberty City, there was a glittering and translucent tower, which seemed to be carved out of ice for thousands of years. The tower was not big, and it looked beautiful and fragile, as if it would melt in the sun and break at the slightest touch. But they did not approach the tower. Just by looking at it from a distance, they felt that their blood and bones seemed to be frozen. And the screams of Beidangjian and Qi Menghui came from under the tower. Yi Shuesong's eyes suddenly widened, and his chest heaved violently. He was even angrier than when he was provoked by Lung Yuma. He murmured, Avicii Tower. This is the Avicii Tower that is cold to the bone and responsible for destruction. He unconsciously took a step forward, as if he wanted to get closer to see the beautiful tower. But as soon as he took a step, he felt a bone-piercing coldness penetrate his body, making him shiver unconsciously. And the tower in front of everyone quickly disappeared. No, it did not disappear. Instead, it became the size of a palm and flew to the front of a beautiful girl. Then it gently shook as if to please her and disappeared into her palm. Yi Shuesong's fiery eyes followed the Avicii Tower. It was not until the Avicii Tower disappeared that he saw the appearance of the person who took it. His eyes flashed, and he put on a smile on his face. He stepped forward and said, Lord Jun, it turns out that you are well. That's great. Mu Yan did not even look at him. Instead, she walked slowly to Beidangjian and Qi Menghui and said with a faint smile, I heard that you want the Avicii Tower? Beidangjian and Qi Menghui were lying on the ground at this time, looking very embarrassed. 20 or 50,000. There were many frostbites on their bodies. Some places were still covered with thick ice. Some places were frozen, but even their flesh had melted, revealing their white bones. They looked very embarrassed. Hearing Mu Yan's voice, both of them raised their heads, their eyes revealing deep anger and hatred. Only then did he realize what this woman had said. Avicii Tower? The one who attacked them was the Avicii Pagoda? What kind of treasure was that? 2 sea-splitting realm experts like them didn't even have the slightest ability to resist? Mu Yan opened her palm, and the crystal-clear Avicii Pagoda once again appeared in her palm, floating in the air. Her lips curled up, and she looked down at the 2 of them. Do you want the Avicii Tower? How about I give it to you now? Baiteng Zhan and Qi Minghui's eyes shone with greed and excitement. Mayan casually tosses it, and the tower, which seems to be carved out of ice crystals, flies in front of the two people. Just as the two of them were about to reach out to receive it, the tower suddenly expanded. Aha! Shrill screams rang out again. By the time the Avicii Pagoda returned to Mu Yan's hands, Qi Menghui and Baiteng Zhan's throats were already sore from shouting. The two people's appearances were simply too horrible to look at. The people of the Clear Sky sect and the Baiteng family seemed to wake up from a dream at this time, and they hurriedly rushed to rescue their patriarch and sect master in panic. It was reasonable to say that the two of them were high-level sea-splitting realm cultivators, so this bit of physical pain was nothing in their eyes. Chapter 38:21. They only needed to take a little elixir to recover quickly. But the two had just taken the elixir with the help of their subordinates. Their wounds healed, but they immediately froze again. It made them experience the pain of their flesh and blood being melted again. However, the most terrible thing was not these external injuries. It was the kind of cold that invaded their bones. Even the spiritual power in their bodies seemed to be frozen. For a moment, they even felt that they would be immersed in this endless coldness and pain forever. Yi Xuesong and Lu Qianyuan walked forward with sullen faces, pressed their backs, and injected spiritual power into them. After a while, most of the cold in Baiteng Zhan and Qi Minghui's bodies was dispelled, and they regained their consciousness. Yi Xuesong looked at Mayan with a sullen face. "Lord Jun, what are you doing?" Mayan's eyes were cold, and she looked at him with a faint smile. "Didn't you clamor for the Avicii Tower?" "What? I gave it to Master Baiteng and Master Qi, but you're still not satisfied." Yi Xuesong's face was flushed because of his rage. It took him a long time to calm down, and he said coldly, "Lord Jun, we came to Liberty City with good intentions, to deal with the evil Yi Qingfeng. Your attitude of keeping people 1,000 miles away is too much. Aren't you afraid that Yi Qingfeng will come back with his lackeys, and Liberty City won't be able to resist them, and eventually blood will flow like a river?" Lu Qianyuan also took a step forward and said, "I'm Lu Qianyuan, the leader of the Life Alliance. I've long heard of the name, alluring Enchantress. Today, we came uninvited. I hope Lord Jun won't take offense." His eyes turned to the Avicii Tower in Mayan's hand. He coughed lightly and continued, "To tell you the truth, this Avicii Tower was originally a sacred object jointly kept by our three alliances, but it was accidentally lost 10,000 years ago. I don't know where Lord Jun got this Avicii Tower. Since it has fallen into Lord Jun's hands, we have no intention of recovering it. But, quick eye ahem, that evil Yi Qingfeng intends to destroy the entire floating island and let the thousands of creatures on the island die without a burial place. This is an indisputable fact. Now that the floating island's survival is at stake, we will borrow the Avicii Pagoda from City Lord Jun. I believe City Lord Jun will not refuse, right? Of course, we will definitely compensate City Lord Jun after we successfully slay the evil devil." His words sounded righteous on the surface, but they were not. However, he was implying that Mu Yan had stolen the treasures of the three alliances. Leng Yuma angrily picked up her red lotus, soul-stealing blade again. Mu Yan held her down, sneered, and threw the Avicii Pagoda on the ground. Since Alliance Master Lu said that the Avicii Pagoda once belonged to your three alliances, it must not be difficult for you to control it, right? I'll leave it here, and I'll also leave my words here. If you have the ability to borrow the Avicii Pagoda, feel free to do so." After saying that, she did not look at them again, and quickly pulled Leng Yuma and the others to the side. Just by using his divine sense, he could tell how badly injured the people of the Xiaoyao sect were. Qin Jiu, Leng Yuma, and Ling Yuxing were already like arrows at the end of their flight. The spiritual energy in his body was almost depleted, and his body was riddled with wounds. But the most serious one was Chu Moli. At this time, he looked to be talking and smiling, as if there was nothing different from usual. But only Mu Yan knew how seriously his body had been eroded and destroyed at this moment. Mu Yan did not have the time to ask what had happened before. Why did third senior brother use such a powerful curse, or where big senior brother and Xiao Qi were? She could only quickly take out the Tian Mo Qin to treat them. Chapter 38-22. Wei Mian glanced at Yi Shuesong and the others surrounding the Avici Pagoda and promptly ordered the Xiaoyao army to enter the city and surround Mu Yan, not allowing anyone to approach. Time went by. The sound of the zither echoing in the whole Xiaoyao city finally stopped. Mu Yan lets out a long sigh and wipes the sweat from her forehead. What happened just now? Yi Qingfeng was here? Our big brother and Xiao Qi all right? Leng Yuma told him everything that had happened. Mu Yan frowned slightly and turned her eyes to the Avici Pagoda. If we give the Avici Pagoda to Yi Qingfeng, will he really let Big Brother and Xiao Qi come back? Chu Moli bent his fingers and gently tapped on the wheelchair, saying slowly, Yi Qingfeng doesn't seem to have much killing intent towards Big Brother and Xiao Qi. Especially when Xiao Qi summoned the mythological beast Bai Zhe. Chu Moli always felt that the change in Yi Qingfeng's expression at that moment was very intriguing. It was very interesting. Seeing the smile on her third brother's face, Mu Yan couldn't help but twitch her mouth. However, she firmly believed in Chu Moli's judgment. In that case, let's exchange the Avici Pagoda. Fourth sister and fifth brother will accompany me. Leng Yuma and Ling Yuxing nodded together. Mu Yan stood up and looked at the people surrounding the Avici Pagoda with a bit of ridicule in her eyes. An hour passed. These famous leaders of the 3 major alliances, the heads of the 6 major families, and the heads of the 8 major sects tried their best against a small pagoda. Hundreds of treasures were taken out, but they couldn't move the Avici Pagoda at all. On the contrary, several people were frostbitten by the Avici Pagoda. Mu Yan said in a clear voice, Have you seen enough? Hearing her voice, Yi Shuesong and the others suddenly turned back. Everyone's face was extremely unsightly. Mu Yan waved her hand, and the motionless Avici Pagoda immediately soared into the air and flew into Mu Yan's palm. The palm-sized pagoda was crystal clear, emitting a sparkling light. It was magnificent. Moreover, it didn't emit the slightest chill. It was extremely well-behaved. So the faces of Yi Shuesong and the others darkened. Mu Yan chuckles. You said that the Avici Pagoda belongs to the 3 alliances and wanted to borrow it from me. But now you can't take it away, so you can't blame me, right? Yi Shuesong's face alternated between green and white. Governor Jun, you actually made the Avici Pagoda recognize you as its master. You're really capable and resourceful. Mu Yan was too lazy to pay attention to him. She glanced at everyone present. So, can you please get the hell out of Liberty City? Of course, if you don't want to scram. The Avici Pagoda in her palm suddenly enlarged and floated in the air, emitting a bone-chilling coldness. If you're not willing to scram, then I'll have to personally send you out. Almost as soon as the Avici Pagoda became bigger, the people from the various sects all retreated, revealing expressions of fear. After the initial shock, he was completely enraged. Every one of them was a high-grade cultivator who had lived for hundreds or even thousands of years, and was a lofty sect master. But today, he was wantonly humiliated in a small place like Liberty City. Now, he was about to be chased out by a little girl. How could they tolerate this? With a ferocious expression, Bait Angjan gnashed his teeth and said, Just a mere Liberty City and a few bitches. I don't believe it. Today, we'll gather all the members of the Baiting family and slaughter this damn place. Chapter 38-23. Wei Mian roared angrily. You want to massacre the entire city? Do you think our Liberty City will be afraid? Xiaoyao army, listen up. Yes. Orders. Orders. The shouts of 100,000 people reverberated in the valley, shaking the mountains and rivers. The atmosphere instantly became tense. Calm down. Calm down, everyone. Please listen to me. At this moment, Yi Shuesong had regained his courtesy. He bowed to Mu Yan deeply and said, City Master Jun, we were reckless and offended you just now. I am willing to apologize to Liberty City on behalf of all the leaders of the Fiends Slaying Alliance. His voice was deep and thick, filled with sincere apologies. It was as if nothing had happened. But I ask City Lord June to believe that our evil slaying alliance's intentions are all good. We want to kill the evil Yi Qingfeng and return peace to the floating island. Besides, the seventh young master of Liberty City was the little prince of the Lan Empire, which meant that there was a blood feud between him and Yi Qingfeng. In that case, Yi Qingfeng is our common enemy. General Wei, what do you say? Wei Mian's expression changed slightly, involuntarily withdrawing the spiritual sense that was controlling the 100,000-strong army. Yi Xuesong is very satisfied with their reactions. He slowly exhales, and his expression towards mine becomes even more humble. The Avicii Tower is Lord June's treasure. We naturally don't have the qualifications to encroach on it. However, to kill Yi Qingfeng, the Avicii Pagoda was indispensable. Today, I, Yi Xuesong, on behalf of the Demon Slaying Alliance, hope that City Lord June can join the Demon Slaying Alliance and assume the position of Alliance Master. Beit Angzhan shouted, Alliance Master Yi. There's no need to say anything more. I've already made up my mind. For the sake of exterminating the demons, for the sake of the people of the world, no matter what price I have to pay, it's all worth it. Yi Xuesong is filled with a strong sense of righteousness. His eyes don't even blink as he looks straight at Mayan. City Lord June, what do you think? Mu Yan slightly narrowed her eyes and looked at Yi Xuesong for a long time. Then she lightly said, I want to use the Avicii Tower to exchange for the safety of my fellow apprentices. Are you kidding me? How can you give the Avicii Pagoda to Yi Qingfeng? Are you crazy? Yi Xuesong raised his hand, signaling for everyone to quiet down. City Lord June, I understand that you are worried about the safety of your fellow disciples. But the Avicii Pagoda must not be handed over to Yi Qingfeng. Otherwise, not only the 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 great sects, but also your Liberty City will definitely not be able to survive. If City Lord June is willing to believe this old man, I have a way that can guarantee the safety of your senior and junior brothers. At the same time, it can also kill Yi Qingfeng, making him absolutely never have a chance to rise again. Floating Island, Lan Empire Imperial Palace. The sun couldn't be seen in the dungeon, so it was impossible to know what night it was. Luo Yu and Yun Ruhan were locked inside. Every day, delicious food and drinks were sent in. He had not been tortured or interrogated, nor had he been insulted or slighted. But it was really too boring. Luo Yu felt that she was so bored that she was going to rot. Eldest senior brother, what do you think Yi Qingfeng wants to do? He has a grudge against the Lan family empire, and he wants to destroy the entire floating island. But what good does that do him? Yun Ruhan shook her head. Back when he was still Lan Luohan, he had interacted with state preceptor Yi Qingfeng. But he didn't understand what this person was thinking at all. He only knew that Yi Qingfeng suddenly appeared beside his father, Lan Yaozong, one day. Chapter 38-24. Lan Yaozong trusted this person very much, to the point of being obedient. And Yi Qingfeng himself was also very powerful. Whether it was his cultivation, strength, or resourcefulness, he was not comparable to ordinary people. In just a few years, this person already had power over the entire court. Under one person, and above tens of thousands. By right, such a person should eventually become a powerful minister, or even replace the emperor. But what about Yi Qingfeng? He directly turned the Lan family empire's imperial palace, which had been glorious for tens of thousands of years, into a graveyard like Ghost City. He even wanted to take out the heaven-reaching halberd that supported the floating island. This was tantamount to wanting the entire floating island to collapse, to let tens of thousands of lives die without a burial place. What good would this do him? Luo Yu suddenly murmured, could it be for revenge? Revenge? Seeing Yun Ruhan look over in surprise, Luo Yu laughed dryly. Nothing, I was bored, so I guessed. The main characters of Yi Qingfeng's story were Yi Nu and Lan Chushi. Lan Chushi was obviously the founder of the floating island, Lan Xiao's son. But they had been on the floating island for so long, heard many legends about Lan Xiaoza, and saw many cultivators worshipping the beast god. but they had never heard of Lan Chushi. The floating island was clearly specially built by Lan Xiaoza, who sacrificed his life for his son Lan Chushi. But the floating island still existed, but Lan Chushi seemed to have disappeared from this world. No one remembered him, no one mentioned him. Then, what about Yi Nu? Where did Yi Nu, who regarded Lan Chushi as his faith and only family, go? Dancing God ebook both surnamed Yi. Yi Nu couldn't be related to Yi Qingfeng, right? And his vague and chaotic dream. Luo Yu was lost in thought when suddenly Yi Xuan's voice came from the front. Greetings, Imperial Tutor. Luo Yu and Yun Ruhan suddenly stood up and entered a state of alert. A tall figure slowly appeared in the pitch black, seemingly endless underground tunnel. The moment she saw Yi Qingfeng, Luo Yu's heart jumped slightly. Because compared to a few days ago, Yi Qingfeng's face seemed paler. And because she suddenly felt that the feeling Yi Qingfeng gave her now was very similar to that of the youth called Yi Nu in the painting. The figures in the painting were clearly abstract, and their faces could not be seen clearly. However, Luo Yu felt as if their figures were overlapping. Yi Xuan said, "Both of you, follow us out." "Go out for what?" Luo Yu was still in a daze and asked subconsciously. Yi Xuan seemed to smile. "The city master of Liberty City has brought the Avicii Pagoda to exchange for you. It is now in the Blue Emperor City. Or is it because your highness is too comfortable here and you don't want to leave?" 6 senior sisters awake. Luo Yu and Yun Ruhan looked at each other happily. Then, he looked at Yi Qingfeng suspiciously. "Are you really going to let me and eldest senior brother go so easily?" Yi Qingfeng's line of sight never fell on him. Instead, he seemed to be absent-mindedly looking at the candle at the side. Upon hearing Zhang Xian's question, he turned to look at Zhang Xian and asked warmly, "What's wrong? Is your highness really unwilling to leave? Do you plan to accompany me here for the rest of your life?" Luo Yu immediately exploded. "Who wants to accompany you for the rest of their lives in this godforsaken place? Is that so? I don't want it either." Yi Qingfeng smiled, turned around and said, "Then, your highnesses, please follow me." Chapter 38-25. Is the passage leading to this place? Walking out of the dungeon and looking at the blue sky and white clouds in front of him, Luo Yu frowned and muttered with a puzzled face. They had clearly gone down from the studio before, but he didn't voice out his doubts. It was obvious that with Yi Qingfeng's ability, it was as easy as flipping his hand if he wanted to set up a deceptive formation and switch positions. Luo Yu just followed Yun Ruhan closely. He knew that his eldest senior brother's injury hadn't healed. His devil body was also seriously injured. In this dangerous place, he must protect his eldest senior brother and not let anyone hurt him. "National Master, are you really going to the Blue Emperor's camp in person?" Yi Aixin, Yi Adi, and Yi Ahuang also came to Yi Qingfeng's side. Yi Aixin was looking at Yi Qingfeng with a worried face. That place is the most suitable for setting a trap. If the people of Liberty City have any tricks, it's just exchanging hostages. Why don't the 4 of us go? That's right. National Master, just wait here. We will definitely bring back the Avicii Tower. Yi Qingfeng shook his head and said indifferently, "No need. Everything goes according to the plan." "National Master." Yi Qingfeng looked at them coldly. "Do you want to disobey?" In an instant, the pressure and killing intent emitted by the originally thin and weak person made Yi Aixin and the other 3 tremble.
"We dare not."
Blue Emperor City, Blue Emperor's camp. On the huge square, 2 flying shuttles landed almost at the same time. 6th senior sister, 4th senior sister, 5th senior brother. The moment Luo Yu saw the 3 of them, he shouted excitedly and wanted to rush over. But before he could take 2 steps, he was grabbed by the collar and dragged back. Luo Yu turned his head and saw Yi Qingfeng's expressionless face. 123 book watching Nita cold voice rang in his ears. "Your Highness, please respect us. We are exchanging hostages now." Ahem. Luo Yu coughed awkwardly and stood back obediently. When Yi Qingfeng couldn't see her, he couldn't help but bare his teeth at him. Since he was captured and brought to the Lan Empire's palace, he hadn't been imprisoned or restrained in any real sense. Instead, he listened to Yi Qingfeng tell a story that had no beginning or end, but had a lingering effect. During this period, the fruits and pastries never stopped. As a result, the fact that he had become a prisoner did not feel real at all. That's why he got carried away when he saw Mayan and the others just now. On the other side, Muyan looked pensive when she saw this scene. It seemed like third senior brother's guess was right. Yi Qingfeng did not have any killing intent towards eldest senior brother and Xiaoqi. Moreover, Yi Qingfeng's attitude toward Xiaoqi was really thought-provoking. Not to mention malice, there was even a hint of connivance. Muyan couldn't help curling up the corners of her lips. His heart, which had been on tenterhooks, was now much more relaxed. Her gaze landed on Yi Qingfeng, carefully sizing him up. The last time they met, her cultivation was still very low, so she couldn't see through Yi Qingfeng's cultivation at all. But today, Muyan's cultivation had risen to the earth-opening realm. 2 of the Tian Mo Qin strings are repaired. When he was in the Ning family, he had even fought with experts like Ning Kunshan and Yin Yuanyi. So when she saw Yi Qingfeng at this time, she could already vaguely see through this person's cultivation. But it was also because she could see through it that her heart was shaken like a monstrous wave. Yi Qingfeng turned out to be the same as Yun Ruhan, a half-demon, half-spirit body. Chapter 38-26. His demon core was also much larger than the one in Big Senior Brother and himself. It was surrounded by thick, powerful, and bone-chilling demon qi. With the two superimposed, it was simply unimaginable just how powerful this person was. Muyan even felt that Yi Qingfeng's strength might have already surpassed the Ning family's ancestor Ning Kunshan, who was at the peak of the profound immortal stage. However, Ning Kunshan was a monster who came from the Xiuxian continent and had lived for thousands of years. How did Yi Qingfeng do it? Just as Muyan was sizing Yi Qingfeng up, Yi Qingfeng's line of sight also looked over. A hint of surprise flashed across his usually calm eyes. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up slowly. I didn't expect that the Lord of Tianguang Ruins, Yi Liangqin, who slaughtered the Carnage List 12 times in a row, who controlled the Tianguang Ruins and stole the Avicii Pagoda from under my nose, was actually the famous Enchantress Dr. June. After parting at Tianguang Ruins and meeting again today, the surprise that City Lord June has given me has increased instead of lessened. Yi Qingfeng still remembered that more than half a year ago, the Tianguang Ruins had changed owners and the slaughtering world had disappeared. At that time, the little girl he met in Tianguang Ruins was only at the mysterious life realm. Although he was also extremely talented and shocking. But in Yi Qingfeng's eyes, he was just an ant. If it wasn't for the mysterious force that expelled him from the Tianguang Ruins, he would have been dead by now. He only needed a thought to crush this little girl's divine soul. However, in just half a year, this girl had already become so much stronger. No, it's not just Mayan who's powerful, and everyone around her. Yi Qingfeng immediately recalled everything he saw in the Mirage Light Stone. You can grow in battle. Tenacious and unyielding, helping each other. It was as if they would never abandon the people around them, regardless of life or death. Yi Qingfeng's gaze unconsciously swept past Luoyu. The youth's face was filled with pure trust and determination. The Avicii Pagoda was a precious treasure. Guangxi, but no matter if it was Luoyu or Yun Ruhan, they had never doubted whether their fellow disciples would be willing to use treasures to exchange for them. That was good too. This was good. At least in his generation, there were people who truly loved and protected him. At least this way, he could leave without any worries. That person deserved the best in the world. Yi Qingfeng slightly lowered his eyebrows and said indifferently, City Lord June, you should remember what I said, right? Did you bring the Avicenna? Of course. Mayan raises her hand, and a jade-white pagoda appears in her palm. The corner of her lips curled up as she chuckled. How does the Imperial Advisor want to exchange? Yi Qingfeng grabbed Luo Yu's collar once again. With a flash, he had already arrived at the center of Blue Emperor's camp. Yi Aishan's reaction was also extremely fast. However, he didn't grab Yin Ruhan. Instead, he gestured for her to follow behind him. Mu Yan smiles and jumps up as well. He could still hear Luo Yu's flustered and exasperated voice. Yi Qingfeng, do you think I'm a sack or a chicken?
So be it.
How can you be so arrogant? Look at how gentle and polite Yi Aishan is to my eldest senior brother. Mu Yan couldn't help but burst out laughing. Their Shao Qi could really be so lively no matter where he went. However, an unforeseen event happened at this moment. Rumble. A deafening clap of thunder came from the sky, following which, a huge shadow engulfed the entire Blue Thearchus camp. Following which, a huge net of fire descended from the sky, as well as flames that could melt a person's bones. Purple Lightning Fire Barrier. Chapter 38-27. The purple lightning and the blazing flame interweaved into a dense net, trapping Mu Yan and Yi Qingfeng in it. Then, a ray of light shot out from the center of the thunderfire net. Like a rope, it wrapped around Yi Qingfeng and Mu Yan, who was holding the Avicii Tower. The Avicii Tower shook violently, emitting a bone-piercing cold air. But the purple lightning fire shield seemed to be specially designed to restrain this kind of cold air. It was firmly wrapped in flames, then floated in the air and fell into the hands of an old man. What are you doing? Leng Yuma and Ling Yuxing, who were guarding against Yi Qingfeng, were watching this transaction with vigilance. They pulled out their weapons and wanted to jump forward. However, before the two of them could make a move, a dozen figures appeared beside them. The gleaming blades were placed on their necks. Yi Adi, Yi Ashwan, and Yi Huang were also treated the same way. A familiar voice came to Leng Yuma's ears. Miss Leng, young Masterling, I advise you not to act rashly. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that you can get out of here unscathed. Yi Shuesong. Leng Yuma gritted her teeth and looked at the man who was still smiling gently and elegantly. You plan to use our Xiaoyao sect as a stepping stone from the beginning, right? Yi Shuesong smiled slightly, ignoring the two people's angry stares. His body disappeared, and in the blink of an eye, he was already above the purple lightning fire shield. He bowed and said, I pay my respects to the three ancestors. Above the purple lightning fire shield, three sage-like old men with fluttering Taoist robes were floating in the air. And the leading old man was holding a crystal-clear small tower in his hand. The three people's eyes seemed to be extremely hot. Hearing Yi Shuesong's words, the three people nodded indifferently. The old man in the middle said in a warm voice, Shuesong, you did a good job this time. Today, we can get rid of Yi Qingfeng, this demon, because of you. Yi Shuesong's face flashed with joy, but he still said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, Ancestor, you flatter me. It is our duty to kill the demon and maintain the stability of the floating island. The fellow Taoists of the Fiend-Slaying Alliance had also contributed a lot. After this matter is over, we still need to reward them according to their contributions. The ones suppressing Leng Yuma, Yi Adi, and the others were the strongest experts sent by the three alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects. Now that they heard Yi Shuesong's words, their faces lit up with excitement. Only the alliance master of the Sacred Heaven Alliance, Xiang Yunzhou, looked at the trapped Mu Yan with a face full of guilt. However, one of the 3 old men was the ancestor of the Xiang clan. He had no choice but to obey orders. Besides, his father, Xiang Batian, was still in Yi Qingfeng's hands. The 3 ancestral patriarchs slowly descended to the ground. Their gazes passed through the purple lightning and flames and landed on Yi Qingfeng's face. Their eyes were filled with intense disgust, hatred, and fear. Then, it slowly turned into relief and carefreeness, as if a huge problem had finally been solved. Slave Yi, I really didn't expect a dog slave like you to survive that year. Night slave. Luo Yu suddenly turned her head to look at Yi Qingfeng, her face filled with shock. Yi Qingfeng was really a night slave. Yi Qingfeng said indifferently, Yes.
Of course I survived.
How can I die before I send you ungrateful beasts to accompany my young master? Chapter 38:28. He slowly curled his lips, revealing his white teeth. The smile on his face became gloomy and terrifying. Even if I really die and turn into a ferocious ghost and fall into hell, I will crawl back step by step and personally tear each and every one of you into pieces. His voice was so calm, and there was no fluctuation in his emotions. There was still a coquettish and charming smile on his face. However, the three patriarchs seemed to be frightened by something. They all took a step back, and their faces were pale. But in a moment, they came to their senses. An angry look appeared on his face. "Shut up. You're just a lowly slave. What right do you have to question us?" The ancestor of the Luo Yun alliance, Enchanting's face twitched violently, and his chest heaved up and down. "Who do you think you are? Do you know what righteousness is and what sacrifice is? We're also very sad about nephew Chu Shi's death, but we had no choice. When the floating island was first built, we didn't expect that the island would be attracted and affected by the cultivation continent. The heaven-piercing halberd is about to collapse because of this pull. Once the heaven-piercing halberd disintegrates, the entire floating island will collapse, and the thousands of cultivators left on the island will also die." Speaking of this, Enchanting's eyes turned red, and his face showed pity. "But the heavenly halberd was made from the sacrifice of our master's body and the soul of the beast god. How could ordinary treasures or blacksmiths repair it? The only way to repair it is young Master Chu Shi, who can also summon the divine beast by Zhe. Young Master Chu Shi is kind-hearted. It's because he foresaw such a desperate situation that he chose to sacrifice himself so that the people on the floating island could live. Motherfucking bullshit." Before Enchanting could finish his words, a hoarse and angry shout was heard. Yi Huang ignored the sharp knife at his throat and rushed over crazily. Blood flowed down from his neck, but he didn't care at all. There was only deep hatred and brutality in his eyes. "You bunch of ungrateful beasts. Do you still remember what Master said to you before he left? Do you remember why the Master sacrificed himself to build the road to heaven? He did it for the young Master. Only for the young Master. Who do you think you are to make Master sacrifice himself to save you? Do you still remember that you promised Master that you would protect the young Master and send him to the Xiaoxian continent? You ungrateful people, burning the bridge after crossing the river. You bunch of filthy, disgusting, despicable things. Why should the young Master die for you? Aren't you afraid that when you wake up in the middle of the night, Master will come to take your lives?" Yi Huang's every word was like a sharp knife stabbing into the hearts of Enchanting and the other two. The expressions of the three of them became somewhat unsightly. He seemed to have thought of something, and his face even turned slightly pale. Shuesong coughed lightly and said, "So you're the four protectors of heaven, earth, profound, and yellow who followed by young Master Chu." She sighed back then. "Alas, you were the dignified elite guards of the Lan Empire back then. How did you fall into such a state where you're neither human nor ghost today? You're even hanging out with Yi Qingfeng, this demon, and taking the side of the wicked. Can you face young Master Chu, Shi's spirit in heaven, by doing this? What the hell are you talking about?" Yi Huang had already been restrained by someone, and his blood was flowing all over the ground. The wound was so deep that the bone could be seen. But he seemed to not feel it at all. His eyes bulged, and he only wanted to tear the person in front of him into pieces. Chapter 38:29. Shuesong smiled faintly. He was not afraid of his hideous appearance at all. He said righteously, "The founder of the levitation space, Lan Xiaoza, sacrificed himself to the heavens to pave a way for us. How benevolent and righteous he was. Young Master Chu, she was educated by the court at a young age. Naturally, he was chivalrous and compassionate. Seeing that the floating island was about to collapse and thousands of creatures were about to suffer, how could he stand by and watch? That's right. The floating island was indeed created by the founder of the levitation space for his son. But in the face of the disaster, it was young Master Chu Shi who volunteered to give up his life to save thousands of creatures. How could a selfish and greedy slave like Yi Qingfeng understand such benevolence and righteousness? These words made the faces of the old ancestors of the three alliances look much better. Beiteng Zhan and the others immediately echoed loudly. Alliance Master Yi is right. We are grateful to the founder of the levitation space, Lan Xiao's great kindness, and young Master Chu Shi's sacrifice. It is precisely because of this that we, the survivors, should protect this island even more. Ha 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 ha. Yi Aishan's laughter suddenly came from the purple lightning fire shield. After telling the lie 1,000 times, you finally believe it? Yi Jingqing, Xiang Weiran, Lu Xingzhan, do you think that you'll be allowed to distort the truth and fabricate lies just because all the people who stayed by the young master's side are dead? Yi Aishan suddenly pounced over and grabbed the huge net formed by the purple lightning fire shield. Flames and lightning burned his skin and flesh, making a sizzling sound. But Yi Aishan seemed to be unaware of it. He had always been calm and composed, but now his face was ferocious and his eyes were blood red. The sarcoma on his forehead trembled violently. The young master didn't sacrifice himself voluntarily. He sacrificed the divine beast Bai Zhe and his divine soul to refine the supreme heaven halberd. It was you ungrateful, despicable, and shameless people who colluded with each other to force Yi Nu into the primordial cave abode. His life was hanging by a thread, and his cultivation was destroyed. You even used him as a hostage to threaten the young master. In order to let Yi Nu live, in order to let the people around him go, the young master chose to sacrifice himself to repair the supreme heaven halberd. What about you? After young master's death, you couldn't wait to kill everyone in the Lan family's direct branch, dividing up all the forces belonging to the Lan family's direct branch and supporting the Lan family's side branch, who had forced young master to his death, to ascend the throne. That's not all. The young lord sacrificed his life to protect the night slave, but what about you guys? The moment you turn around, you attack the night slave. You even want to kill us, the young master's personal guards. Just like that, you guys still have the nerve to talk about righteousness and sacrifice.
Pooh.
Hearing the names of master and young master come out of your mouths, I feel disgusted. His words caused many people in the square to look at each other in dismay, revealing shocked expressions. People like Yi Xuesong and Lu Qianyuan, who had lived for thousands of years, already knew a lot of the truth. Therefore, his heart did not waver. However, people like Ge Tianpeng of the Weiwa Pavilion and Xue Lihong of the Great Goose School had never thought that the truth was so dirty and disgusting. For a moment, they were shocked. They looked at the three ancestors and put down the swords in their hands. Yi Xuesong frowned and wanted to say something. Chapter 3830. Xiang Weiran, the ancestor of the Xiang family, sneered, Xuesong, you don't have to say anymore. Even if we threatened and forced Lan Chushi back then, so what? But isn't all this Lan Chushi's fault for not being sensible? He clearly knew that only by sacrificing the beast god could he save the thousands of creatures on the floating island, but he refused to sacrifice himself. Isn't this unjust? We are clearly the senior officials who accompanied his father to conquer the country, his closest relatives, but he would rather put a dog slave from the brothel in an important position. This is unfilial. Such an unfilial and unjust person. What's wrong with us killing him in exchange for the survival of the floating island? These words were said with awe-inspiring righteousness, powerful and resonant. Immediately, the three alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects cheered in unison. Yi Aishan took a deep breath, his turbulent emotions slowly calmed down. The corners of his mouth hooked up in a mocking arc, and he slowly walked back to Yi Qingfeng's side, saying slowly, State Preceptor, I was wrong. You are right. He closed his eyes, his voice hoarse and sorrowful. This floating island, if all the people on this island are still alive, it is the greatest blasphemy to young master. They all deserve to die. Yi Qingfeng's expression was unusually calm from beginning to end. His pale face was unruffled, and there was a faint smile at the corner of his captivating red mouth. Only when Yi Ching-feng mentioned that Lan Chushi chose to sacrifice himself to save him did the hands hanging by his side suddenly clench into fists. And Luo Yu, Yun Ruhan and Mu Yen, who were also in the purple lightning fire shield, quickly looked at each other. At the same time, they understood the meaning in each other's eyes. Why were the so-called demon-slaying alliance of the upper and lower realms all so shameless? Was this the tradition of the XX alliance? Lord Jun, your highnesses. The three were communicating with their eyes. Suddenly, they heard Yi Shuesong's gentle voice coming from outside. I know you all have an irreconcilable hatred with this demon Yi Ching-feng. Now that the time is right, the place is right, the three of you can take revenge. Mayan looked at Yi Shuesong and said with a faint smile, Alliance Master Yi took away my Avicii Pagoda, but you want me to risk my life to fight a Xian immortal? Do you want us to take revenge or to die? Yi Shuesong was not flustered at all, saying methodically, City Lord Jun, there is no need to panic. Within this purple lightning fire shield, Yi Ching-feng cannot summon his water Qilin. We understand the strength of the people of the Xiaorao sect. City Lord Jun's skill as a musician is superb, not to mention the first prince's ice soul sword and the young prince's Bai Zhe, the mythical beast. Pausing for a moment, he continued, as long as the three of you can kill Yi Ching-feng and the dog servants by his side, at that time, I will naturally let the three of you out safely. Yun Ruhan said coldly, so, if you can't kill Yi Ching-feng, you want to trap us in the purple lightning fire shield forever? Yi Shuesong chuckled and did not answer. It was tantamount to acquiescing. Mayan turned her wrist, and the Tian Mo Qin appeared in her palm. The corners of her lips slowly curled up, and her cold eyes fell on Yi Shuesong's face. Alliance Master Yi, I'm afraid you haven't heard the purpose of our Xiaorao sect, right? Lord Jun, please speak. Her slender fingers gently plucked the strings of the Tian Mo Qin. The melodious sound of the qin accompanied the girl's clear and sweet voice, resounding throughout the Blue Emperor's camp. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll cut the weeds and pull up the roots. Clang. The music rang out, and the war song rose. Chapter 38-31. The music rang out, and the battle song rose. Are you really ready to fight against our Liberty City head-on? Almost as soon as he finished speaking, a swoosh was heard. A black arrow flew from afar and landed directly on the purple lightning fire shield, almost at the moment when the arrow tip touched it. The entire lightning fire net began to disintegrate as if it had been melted by something. Following that, a deep and resounding shout rang out. All members of the Liberty Army, listen up. Anyone who dares to fight against our Liberty City will be killed without mercy. What responded to them was a deafening roar that covered the entire Lan Emperor city, which spread throughout the mountains and plains. Anyone who dares to fight against our Liberty City will be killed without mercy. Kill without mercy. Yi Shuesong's face was full of astonishment. Almost at the same time, a loud boom was heard. 2 iron hammers fell from the sky and smashed toward the people who had been holding Lung Yuma and Ling Yuxing hostage. Qi Menghui and the others didn't expect such a change at all. They were in a flurry and were tired of dealing with it. But in this moment of negligence, Ling Yuxing immediately performed the absolute space field. Time and space were both frozen at this moment. The Red Lotus soul-stealing saber soared into the sky and chopped down. Damn it, stop them. Damn it, how can 2 Earth-opening realm juniors have such power? When the Red Lotus fire dissipated, Lung Yuma and Ling Yuxing were nowhere to be seen. On the contrary, the high-grade defensive clothes on their bodies were burned to tatters and covered in dust. They were in a sorry state. Qi Menghui and the others turned around and saw Ling Yuxing and Lung Yuma, who had just escaped, join Mayan and the other 2 in surprise. At the same time, Qin Jiu, who had just retrieved his giant hammer, also descended from the sky. And Chu Moli, who was sitting in a wheelchair with a smile on his face, looked very fragile. Behind the 7 people, Wei Mian, Butcher, Tai Tu, Old Go, Ruan Yang, the generals of the Liberty Army were all gathered, bowing and waiting for orders. And behind them, there was the 100,000 troops surrounding the entire Lan Emperor city. With one order, they could launch an attack under the leadership of the divine generals of the royal region. Yi Xuesong's expression could no longer be described as ugly. He glanced at the 7 people in front of him and said through gritted teeth, "City Lord Jun, what is the meaning of this?" Mayan gently plucks the strings of the Tian Mo Chin in her hands, indifferently saying, "What does Alliance Master Yi mean? I naturally mean?" Yi Xuesong said angrily, "Didn't we already agree on the plan?" The 100,000 soldiers of Liberty City went to stop Yi Qingfeng's Dark Knight army. "We will gather all the elites from the 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects to set up a trap in the Blue Thearcha's camp so that Yi Qingfeng will not be able to escape. But now that you have summoned 100,000 free guards here, who can stop the Dark Knight army? You even broke the Purple Lightning Fire Shield.
Do you know what you are doing?"
And the scariest thing was, the young man in the wheelchair, who looked weak and harmless, was smiling warmly. It actually broke the Purple Lightning Fire Shield. That was the Divine King artifact controlled by his old ancestor. How did he do it? Just with that little arrow? Mu Yan hooks up her lips. "Didn't we already agree?" "Oh, I'm sorry. I seem to have forgotten. After all, I am a weak woman, timid, and not very smart. Just now, Alliance Master Yi locked me and my fellow disciples in the Purple Lightning Fire Shield and also threatened to burn us to death if we don't kill Yi Qingfeng. When I was afraid, didn't I confuse our agreement?" Chapter 38-32.
Uffed.
Leng Yuma and the others almost burst out laughing when they heard this. The she-devil who made the whole cultivation continent tremble with fear was a weak woman? And timid? Could their little junior sister be any more blatant in her lies? Even the expressions of Wei Mian and the others behind her were indescribable. The more stubborn Taitu opened his mouth and was about to shout, "Miss, are you kidding? You almost killed us in Gravel Hill. If you're timid, even a sow can. Woo-woo. Butcher, why are you covering my mouth? Woo-woo-woo." Yi Xuesong looked at her gloomily and said after a long while, "You planned it from the beginning." This woman didn't intend to follow his plan from the beginning. He thought he easily deceived her. He used them to plot against Yi Qingfeng. He could even make the 100,000 carefree army soldiers work for him. But who knew that in the end, he was the one who was toyed with. Yi Xuesong prided himself on being shrewd and resourceful. He was always the one who schemed against others and treated them as chess pieces. But this was the first time he was humiliated like this. For a moment, anger, grievance, and killing intent surged up, making his originally gentle and elegant face almost distorted. Mu Yan, however, looked at Yi Xuesong in front of her without changing her expression. She put up 2 slender and white fingers and lightly touched her forehead. She smiled carelessly. "Alliance Master Yi, why can't I understand what you're saying? What's planned from the beginning? Wasn't the plan set by Alliance Master Yi from the beginning? Of course, I'm also at fault. I have a bad memory and I'm timid. But now the carefree army has arrived and the Purple Lightning Fire Shield has been broken. What does Alliance Master Yi plan to do?" The smile on her face slowly disappeared. Her pair of enchanting peach blossom eyes slowly rippled with bone-chilling coldness. "If you want to settle accounts with us, then Carefree City doesn't mind playing along." The entire martial arts practice field of the Blue Emperor's camp was silent. Only the sweet sound of Mu Yan plucking the strings of the zither could be heard intermittently. "Puchi. Ha ha ha." The first to break the silence was Yi Huang, who was still being held hostage. As soon as he smiled, the wound on his neck split open and blood splattered everywhere. But he didn't seem to feel it at all. He just laughed even more happily. "Hey, little fellows of Liberty City, I really like you more and more. Ha ha ha, this group of sanctimonious dogs. We must give them a taste of their own medicine. We must ruthlessly trample on their faces, cough, cough, cough." Bait Angzhan ruthlessly struck him. More blood flowed out. Yi Huang, on the other hand, laughed even more brazenly. On the training field, the people from the 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects all had ugly expressions. Some people were angry and resentful. But some people slowly came back to their senses and quietly retreated to the Xiaorao sect side. Gu Feipeng from the Micromoon Pavilion and Xue Lihong from the Hongyan sect were among them. There were also elders sent by the Situ family's patriarch, Situ Tinji. Seeing their actions, Yi Shuesong's face alternated between green and white. Sect Master Xue, Sect Master Gu, Elder Situ. What do you mean by this? Xue Lihong said indifferently. Our Hongyan sect has always liked to bring fated people together. We're not interested in your schemes. We came here today to join in the fun. Since we can't distinguish right from wrong, we'd better not get involved. Chapter 38-33. Gu Feipeng yelled at the top of his voice, I'm grateful to Liberty City for saving my life. I'll listen to City Lord June. Although this little girl wants my life when she's trying to blackmail me, at least she won't say one thing on the surface and another behind my back. I'd rather believe this little girl than you scoundrels. Elder Situ's words were even simpler. Master told me to listen to the command of Liberty City's City Lord. Situ Tinji was Eng Mei's elder brother. His injuries were healed by Mayan. He couldn't come this time because he was in seclusion. But the people he sent naturally stood on Mayan's side without reservation. Ha 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 ha. Yi Huang laughed even more heartily. This is a good show to watch. Being able to watch this show, my injuries are worth it. Yi Shuesong was so angry that his chest heaved. Looking at Mayan, Gu Feipeng, and the others, intense intent surged in his eyes. But before he could speak, he was interrupted by an old voice. Little girl, you can't be thinking that with just a few brats and a mob of 100,000, you can fight against our 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects, right? The one speaking was Xiang Weiran, the old ancestor of the Sacred Heaven Alliance. He looked more stout than the other 2, with a kind face and a long snow-white beard. His expression was a little regretful and appreciative. He shook his head lightly, saying, It's good for young people to be spirited, but if you're too stubborn and don't know what's important, I'm afraid you'll suffer a great setback. The price you'll have to pay is not something you can bear. Mayan was about to speak. Xiang Yunzhou said nervously, City Lord June, don't be angry. We really don't want to fight against Liberty City. Everyone's goal is the same, which is to get rid of Yi Qingfeng. Why do you have to be so hostile over such a small matter? At this point, he approached Mayan and said in a low voice, Miss June, believe me, it's definitely not a good thing for you to fight against the 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects. That's the old ancestor of the Xiang family, but I've never seen him. I only know that his cultivation has far surpassed the heaven-breaking tier. My grandfather was a heaven-breaking tier elite, but he couldn't even last 15 minutes against you. The great ancestors of the Luo Yun League and the Life League are definitely not weaker than our Xiang clan. No matter how powerful your Xiaoyao school is, no matter how many sects and clans fear you, you can never threaten the 3 great ancestors. You have absolutely no chance of winning against them. Muyan glanced at Xiang Yunzhou and smiled. Many thanks for the reminder, Union Head Xiang. I have my own plans. Her attitude towards Xiang Yunzhou was much better than Yi Shuesong. On one hand, she could tell that Xiang Yunzhou really didn't want anything to happen to Liberty City. Secondly, it was thanks to this person that he was able to refine his natal sword. Xiang Yunzhou still wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by Xiang Weiran's cold words. Yunzhou, have you forgotten your identity? Xiang Yunzhou's body stiffened, and he didn't dare to speak again. He obediently retreated. Only then did Xiang Weiran look at Mayan. City Lord June, just now, Shuesong indeed went too far by locking you in the purple lightning fire barrier. Old Yi and I apologize to you on his behalf. Yi Jingqing's hawk-like eyes were sizing up Mayan and Chu Moli. His fingers lightly stroked the Avicii pagoda in his hand, and he didn't say anything after hearing Xiang Yunzhou's words. Chapter 38-34. Xiang Weiran continued. How about this? There's no deep hatred between us. On the contrary, the two highnesses, as well as General Wei, have a blood feud with Yi Qingfeng. General Wei, have you forgotten how your 30,000 guards were slaughtered by Yi Qingfeng one by one? How the few of you were crippled of your cultivation and thrown into the gravel hill? Wei Mian's hands suddenly clenched at his sides. He couldn't help but look at Yi Qingfeng. From the sudden turn of events until now, this man has been silently standing in the same place, as if it had nothing to do with him at all. Wei Mian remembers his comrades who died tragically, the corpses all over the ground, and the decades of hellish life. A strong murderous intent bursts out of his eyes. He doesn't want revenge? He doesn't want to kill Yi Qingfeng? No, of course he wants to. But Wei Mian closes his eyes and turns to Mian. He takes a deep breath and swallows down the surging emotions in his heart. The mist told him to be patient and listen to orders. Since he has already recognized the mist as his master, and since he has received so much kindness from the mist, he naturally can't destroy the mist plan for his own selfish desires. Xiang Weiran looks at Wei Mian's expression, the corners of his mouth slightly hooking up. Then he looks at Luo Yu. Also, Little Highness, everyone on the floating island knows that your mother died in Yi Qingfeng's hands, and your maternal family was also massacred by this man overnight. Don't you really want revenge? Luo Yu bared her fangs and put on a fake smile. What does it have to do with you whether I want revenge or not? Xiang Weiran didn't receive the expected response, but instead heard such provocative words. His face can't help but sink. Little Highness, I see that you are an orphan of the Lan family, the bloodline of the late Empress. That's why I treat you with courtesy. Aren't you being too ungrateful? Luo Yu sneers. I'm sorry, I'm a person who especially likes to talk to people and talk to ghosts. I naturally know what's good for me when I talk to people of noble character, who understand propriety and integrity. But why should I be polite to a group of ungrateful, shameless, cruel, and unscrupulous beasts? You dare. No matter how good Xiang Weiran's temper was, he couldn't help but be enraged at this moment. Without hesitation, he leaped forward and slapped fiercely towards the top of Luo Yu's head. Mian and the others have long been on guard against their movements. At this moment, his spiritual power surged, and his weapon was ready. Mian's fingers quickly plucked the strings. Divine hands weave the heavens, which he had been preparing for a long time, was activated. However, the people of the Xiao Yao sect didn't expect that. Their movements were a step too slow. Just as Luo Yu was about to summon the divine beast Bai Zhe, a figure blocked her way. There was a loud bang. In the sky, Xiang Weiran was sent flying. After landing, he staggered a few steps back before spitting out a mouthful of blood. He looked in disbelief at the person standing in front of Luo Yu. Yi Qingfeng. Why would he protect Lan Luoyu? Why would he protect the descendant of the Lan family empire? Luo Yu was also a little shocked. Bai Zhe's soul orb, which had already appeared behind him, had even forgotten to retract it. Seeing Yi Qingfeng looking back at him, he asked in a low and calm voice, "Are you hurt?" He shook his head dumbly. Soon after, he couldn't help but frown. "Yi Qingfeng, is your brain broken? If it wasn't broken, why did he save him? If he didn't remember wrongly, wasn't he an enemy of him?" Chapter 38-35. Yi Qingfeng's stiff body relaxed a little after seeing Luo Yu shake her head. His cold eyes looked at Mu Yan. "The deal is done. Can you give me the Avicii Tower?" When Yi Qingfeng spoke, Mu Yan's eyes were still looking at Yi Qingfeng and Luo Yu. After listening to his words, she reacted after a long while, lightly coughed and said, "Of course." The corners of her lips slowly curled up as she said slowly, "Imperial Tutor has just saved my Shaoqi. It's only reasonable for me to complete this transaction." As soon as her voice fell, Yizheng Qing felt the Avicii Tower in his hand vibrate violently. A bone-chilling coldness spread from his palm to the veins of his whole body. At that moment, he almost wanted to let go and throw the tower. But Yizheng Qing still clenched his teeth and persevered. His sharp eyes looked at Mu Yan and he said sternly, Little girl, you want to take the Avicii Tower from my hands. He hadn't finished his words yet. Muyan's fingers suddenly plucked the strings. The Avicii Tower actually left Yi Jingqing's hand and bounced in the air. Yi Jingqing quickly reached out to catch it. But before he could reach the tower, a pale and slender hand that seemed to be carved out of ice grabbed the Avicii Tower in the air and then slowly fell in front of Yi Jingqing. She can't take it, but I can. Yi Qingfeng looked at the old man in front of him coldly. As long as Lord Jun temporarily gives me the control of the Avicii Tower, it will be enough. At this moment, Yi Jingqing, Xiang Weiran, and Lu Xingzhan's complexion became pale. Their eyes were fixed on Yi Qingfeng and the Avicii Tower in his hand. For the first time, there was a frightened expression on their arrogant faces. Yi Xuesong was almost hysterically shouting, Jun Muyan, do you know what you are doing? Do you know what Yi Qingfeng wants to do with the Avicii Tower? Muyan raised her eyebrows and didn't speak. Leng Yuma sneered and said, What does Yi Qingfeng want to do with the Avicii Tower? Tell us. From the beginning to the end, he was secretive and refused to tell us, but he wanted to snatch the thing in my junior sister's hands. Now you're here to question whether my junior sister knows? Is being shameless an unchanging tradition of your 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 sects? Hey, little girl, you can scold people but don't include us in it. Gu Feiping shouted angrily. Although I am also one of the 8 sects, and although I like to take advantage of others, I am definitely not as shameless as them. My Weiwa court and I are innocent. But at this moment, no one paid attention to him, because the Avicii pagoda in Yi Qingfeng's hand had already emitted a dazzling fluorescent light and was slowly flying into the air. The water Qilin whizzed out and leaped into the air. It spat out a cloud of mist that enveloped the Avicii pagoda. This caused the light around the Avicii pagoda to shine even brighter. At the same time, the chill it emitted caused the surrounding air to feel as if it was about to freeze. In the next moment, the ground beneath everyone's feet began to shake violently. Wei Mian's expression changed slightly. He suddenly said with a hoarse voice, I know what Yi Qingfeng wants to do. Mu Yan and the others all looked over. Luo Yu couldn't help saying, Uncle Wei, what does Yi Qingfeng want to do? Wei Mian clenched and loosened his hands at his sides. After a long time, he slowly said, he wants to use the Avicii pagoda to destroy the backbone of the floating island. Heaven-reaching halberd. Chapter 38-36. He wants the floating island to collapse completely and for everyone on the island to fall from the clouds again. Either they die or their cultivation regress, sinking on the path of cultivation and becoming a mediocre mortal. Wei Mian's words made everyone on the martial arts practice field suck in a cold breath. The Hongyan sect, Sita clan, and Weiwa Pavilion, who had already decided to stay neutral or change sides, also revealed expressions of disbelief. They all looked at Yi Qingfeng and the Avicii Tower floating in the air as if they were looking at a terrifying monster. Wei Mian finally couldn't control his emotions and let out a hysterical roar. Yi Qingfeng, even if you have enmity with the ancestors of the 3 alliances, even if the Lan family once wronged Lan Chushi, what wrong did my 30,000 soldiers do? What wrong did the hundreds of women and children of the Shao clan do? What wrong did the tens of thousands of lives on the floating island do? Are you going to let so many people die with Lan Chushi? Yi Qingfeng's gaze slowly looked over, and the corner of his mouth curled up slightly. Die with him? You guys don't deserve it. All I'm doing is asking you to return what you owe Chushi. What's wrong? You can't bear it? Wei Mian moved his lips and wanted to say something. Yi Qingfeng looked at Luo Yu and said lightly, Your Highness, do you still want to hear the second half of that story? Luo Yu blinked.
Now?
Yi Qingfeng curled his lips and smiled. Of course. There's no better time than now. Luo Yu felt that this person was indeed out of his mind. At such a tense moment, what kind of story did he want to tell her? No, why was he so insistent on telling her a story? And I can guess the second half of the story, even if you don't tell me. Luo Yu let out a sigh and pursed her lips unhappily. After you came to the floating island, you found that the floating island was about to collapse, so these people wanted Lan Chushi to sacrifice himself. Lan Chushi wasn't willing, so these shameless people used you as a threat to force him to give in. Yi Qingfeng laughed softly. Your Highness summed it up very well. Luo Yu frowned. But every debt has a debtor. If you want revenge, you can find Yi Qing and the others. Why kill innocent people? Even if their ancestors were wrong, it's none of their business, right? Most importantly, Yi Qingfeng's revenge involved his most beloved master and eldest senior brother. Therefore, no matter how kind Yi Qingfeng had been to him these past few days, he would never be able to help him. The story of Yi Nu and Lan Chushi was so touching. There was no way to erase everything that had happened. Yi Qingfeng said lightly, "What do you think revenge is, Your Highness?" After a pause, he didn't wait for Luo Yu to reply and continued, "Naturally, I have to destroy everything that the enemy cares about the most. Make them pay back what they owe Chu Shi tenfold, 100-fold." A small silver halberd suddenly appeared in Yi Qingfeng's hand. However, this small halberd was very shabby, and its surface was covered with cracks. It was as if the slightest touch would shatter it. Therefore, Yi Qingfeng's movements were very, very careful. His eyes were also filled with an indescribable gentleness. As he stroked it, he said, "Lan Xiaozi sacrificed himself to poke a hole in the sky, creating the floating island. Everything was already set up, paving all the paths for Chu Shi. It should have been foolproof, but has Your Highness ever thought about why the floating island started to collapse in less than 10 years? Chapter 38-37. Luo Yu is startled and subconsciously asks, "Why?" The faces of Yi Qing and the other two become a little unsightly. They seem to want to say something to stop Yi Qingfeng, but they see the water qilin in the sky suddenly roar, and water arrows fall from the sky. The three are exhausted from running for their lives and can no longer speak. Yi Qingfeng doesn't pay attention to them, but with a mocking smile, he slowly says, "Originally, only people with cultivation above the crossing tribulation stage can ascend to the floating island. Moreover, Chu Shi's heaven-connecting halberd can only carry a limited number of people, no more than 100. With each additional person, the pressure on the halberd will increase. And if the person's cultivation is lower than the crossing tribulation stage, the pressure on the halberd will increase exponentially. Your Highness, do you know how many people came to the floating island in the end?" Luo Yu is about to ask how many people, but his expression suddenly freezes. He looks at Mayan and the others and sees the shock in each other's eyes. How many people are there on the floating island today? At least hundreds of thousands of people. But if only 100 people came to the floating island that year, and all of them were high-level cultivators above the crossing tribulation stage. When one's cultivation reaches the crossing tribulation stage, a person's reproductive ability will sharply decline. Where did the population of the floating island come from? 2,682 people, and more than 2,000 of them haven't reached the crossing tribulation stage. Luo Yu drew in a breath of cold air. Yi Qing finally can't help but roar. "Yi Nu, have you forgotten that you also haven't reached the crossing tribulation stage?" "Yes, it's precisely because I haven't reached the crossing tribulation stage." Yi Qingfeng slowly closes his eyes, concealing the sorrow and pain in them. His complexion is so pale that it's almost transparent, and his whole body seems like an ice sculpture, about to shatter at any time. "It's all because I haven't reached the crossing tribulation stage. Everything is for him. Because he hasn't reached the crossing tribulation stage, but Lan Chushi wants to take him to the floating island. So these people have something to use against him. These guys who are greedy for pleasure and hold power for a lifetime. Although they also yearn to ascend, yearn to become stronger. But when they think that they will be empty-handed when they arrive at the floating island, without any subordinates to order, they feel panic. They really did have a path to heaven. But before Lan Xiaozi died, he said that in order to meet the conditions for ascension on the floating island, one had to form an undying golden body in order to attract the heavenly tribulation. In other words, he had to at least attain the mysterious, immortal realm. All of them were only at the tribulation stage and hadn't even reached the golden immortal stage. How would they know when they would reach the mystic immortal stage? It could be 8 to 10 years. It could also be 100 or 1,000 years. Over the long years, how could they bear to be alone, without any beautiful wives or concubines, without any powerful subordinates, yet they had to listen to Lan Chushi, a junior? Hence, they seized Lan Chushi's only weakness. Night slave. Both of us have not reached the tribulation crossing stage. Why can this lowly slave go to the floating island with us, but my children and nieces can't? It's not that I don't agree with you bringing the night slave, but Chushi, you can't be biased, can you? Since we're going, let's all go together? The floating island has already taken shape, so how could it collapse? Don't worry. Since your father built this paradise for you, he will naturally take care of your safety. How could it collapse just because there are a few thousand more people? Ha, Chushi, you have to think carefully. You're the only bloodline left by second brother, so we can't touch you. Chapter 38:38. But on the floating island, can you protect that lowly slave at your side at all times? If you don't bring all of the Lan family's children and nephews, I can't guarantee that Slave Yi will not be able to live well on the floating island. Yi Qingfeng's voice was hoarse and calm. It was just like how he told the story of him and Lan Chushi, without any emotion. But Luo Yu could hear the heart-wrenching pain, despair, and bone-piercing hatred in his words. His face turned slightly pale. Back then, the group of people who went to the floating island had threatened Lan Chushi with night slaves' safety to maintain their authority. They told Lan Chushi that the floating island would not collapse so easily, so what was the harm in bringing a few more people? But then, the floating island really did collapse. And these people used the same trick again, using Night Slave as a threat to push Lan Chushi, a kind and talented young man and their benefactor, into the abyss of eternal damnation. The floating island, the path to heaven. Blooming flowers, dreamy peach gardens. This was the holy land of many cultivators on the cultivation continent. But who would have thought that the creation of this peach garden hid so much filth and darkness that could not see the light of day? Even so, that was 10,000 years ago. What does it have to do with us? Qi Menghui shrieked. My Clear Sky sect was only established a few thousand years ago. Lan Chushi was long dead by then. What did we do wrong? Why should we be persecuted by you? Why would we end up like this? That's right, the Yin family too. The people on the floating island are innocent. No, we can't let this lunatic destroy our home. Stop him. We must kill this devil before the Avicii Pagoda destroys the heaven-reaching halberd. The Blue Thearka's camp was furious, and spiritual power surged. At this moment, they seemed to have forgotten the shamelessness and ugliness of Yi Jinqing and the other old monsters. They forgot everything that everyone on this continent owed Lan Chushi. They only wanted to protect their own interests. Yi Jinqing and the other two, who were originally tense, slowly relaxed their brows and showed a natural expression. That's right. What did they do wrong in the past? Since the floating island was already completed, it had a vast territory and abundant spiritual energy. Why was it that only 100 people could enter? In the end, the lives of thousands of people on the floating island were compared to Lan Chushi's life. Wasn't it clear which was more important? What did they do wrong? The smile on Yi Qingfeng's face became more and more scornful, and a bone-chilling coldness shot out of his eyes. See, this is human nature. Selfish, greedy, indifferent. When it didn't affect his own interests, he could still talk about benevolence and morality. Once their own interests were harmed, they would throw all shame and morality to the back of their minds. Chushi, did you see what kind of people you sacrificed your life to save? Luo Yu's brows furrowed slightly as she felt very uncomfortable. This was clearly where he was born. However, he did not like this place at all. The people in front of him were enraged, and they swore to protect their homeland and slay the demons, but he was not moved at all. Instead, he felt disgusted. A hand rested lightly on his shoulder. Luo Yu turned around and met Mayan's eyes, as well as the concerned gazes of the other members of the Xiaorao sect. He couldn't help but look at Yun Ruhan. Chapter 38-39. Yun Ruhan reached out and stroked his hair, her expression gentle and doting. Shao-Chi, you only need to do what you think is right. The rest has nothing to do with you, or the Xiaorao school. Mu Yan smiled. The floating island is your home ground. If Shao-Chi wants to fight, we'll fight. You can tell us which side to fight, and we'll fight there. If we can't beat them, we'll just ask our perverted third senior brother to play dirty. The third senior brother, who was called a perverted and played dirty, smiled gently, as if they were not talking about him. Actually, what little sister wants to say is, Shao-Chi, you can do whatever you want. If you really can't beat them, you can summon Teacher Mo to bully you.
Buffed.
Does this count as what Bixia said? Come on, let's hurt each other. Chu Moli looked over with a smile. Then, Xiao Wu, do you want to try? Forget it. Forget it. Ling Yuxing almost jumped up in fright. Normal people like us don't want to participate in a fight between you perverts. Hearing the laughter of her fellow disciples, Lu Yu felt the haze in his heart slowly dissipate. Mu Yan's eyes sweep over the tense scene. Her voice is clear and melodious, but her tone is unspeakably arrogant. Shao-Chi, you have to remember, the floating island is not our destination. It's just a place for us to stop for the time being. And their goal was very high and very far. Perhaps the peak of the clouds. Or perhaps the sea of stars. So many years had passed, but his master, Shirqing, had never mentioned Luoyu's past. He had not even instilled the thought of revenge in him.
Why?
Was it really because he was worried about their safety? Luoyu remembered what his master had said a long time ago. Everything in the world has its cause and effect. It's not that there is no retribution, but that there is no retribution on you. At that time, Luoyu was only a very young child. He did not understand what his master was saying. So he blinked his big, innocent eyes and asked, "What retribution? Who will retribution be on?" His master did not answer him, but patted his head and said, "It's nothing. I just hope that little Luo you will remember that people cannot live in their memories and the past. Those who wallow in the past and are unable to extricate themselves will one day be blinded by their past. They will no longer be able to find their way forward, and one day they will even lose the most precious and important thing in front of them." A bright smile slowly blossomed on Luo Yu's face, her dimples faintly appearing. Suddenly, he bent his knees and sat cross-legged. "I've decided not to help either side for the time being. They love to fight, they love to take revenge, they love to take revenge. This young master will not accompany them." Mu Yan curled her lips and declared loudly, "Everyone in Liberty City, listen up. Rest here and wait for orders. We'll watch the show." "Oh, General Wei Ruinyang, if you don't want to see it, why don't you go and buy some fruits and pastries for us?" Lung Yuma and the others, who had just sat down, immediately said, "We want melon seeds. We must have melon seeds. How can we watch a show without melon seeds?" Wei Mian, Butcher, Rui Nyang, and the others looked at each other, then floated away like wandering souls. When they returned with a large pile of melon and fruits in their storage bags and handed them to Mu Yan and the others, the interrogation of their souls reverberated in their minds.
Who am I?
Where am I? What am I doing? The scariest thing was that the 100,000 free, unfettered army followed suit. They chose their representatives to go out to buy fruits and pastries. Then, they sat down in groups of 2s and 3s, watching the show and chatting with great interest. Chapter 38-40. Most of them came from the rocky hill. They did not have a good impression of the cultivators on the floating island, the 3 alliances, 6 families, and the 8 major sects. Even if the floating island was really destroyed and fell to the cultivation land, they believed that as long as they followed their mistress, they would definitely be able to survive. Therefore, they did not feel any pressure watching the show. Wei Mian wiped his face and murmured, Even I feel that the floating island's destruction is their own fault. But, however, his 30,000 bodyguards, his master, the entire Shao clan, and the few of them who had lived a life worse than death for the past 20 years, Who could they ask for justice? Seeing the actions of Luo Yu and the people of Liberty City, not to mention Yi Jingqing and the others, even Yi Qingfeng was stunned. Then, he could not help but curl his lips slightly. This smile was different from his usual cold and bloodthirsty smile. It was as if it was tainted with a different temperature. However, it was only for a moment before it disappeared without a trace. He looked at Yi Jingqing, Xiang Weiran, Lu Xingzhan, then Beidang Zhan, Qi Menghui one by one. That pair of eyes that were as beautiful as the stars in the summer night revealed a bone-chilling coldness and madness. Her red lips moved slightly as she said calmly and eerily, "Back then, I said that I would remember everyone here today. There will come a day when I will make you and your descendants pay with blood. I will make you pay back what you owe Lan Chushi tenfold, 100-fold. Yi Aishan." Yi Aishan took a step forward and snapped his fingers expressionlessly. In the next moment, the earth that was already shaking shook even more violently. Then, thousands of soldiers in black armor, even their faces were covered, rushed into the Blue Thearka's camp. Every soldier was escorting a person in their hands. Cold, gleaming weapons were pressed against their necks. The moment he saw these people, Yi Xuesong gasped and screamed, "This is impossible." Yi Jingqing, Xiang Weiran, and Lu Xingzhan's expressions turned extremely ugly. That was because the people being escorted by the black-armored soldiers were all from the 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 major sects. Some of them were elite elders from the sects and families. Some of them were the wives, concubines, and nephews of Yi Xuesong and the others. Among them, there were even a few ancestors of the major sects and clans. Xiang Yunzhou's grandfather, Xiang Batian, was among them. When Beidang Zhan saw that his father was covered in blood from head to toe and his breathing was weak, it was hard to tell whether he was dead or alive. Beidang Zhan was so angry that he almost went crazy. He raised his long blade and was about to rush over. "Yi Qingfeng, what are you trying to do? Let go of my father." However, before he could even get close, he was kicked away by Yi Aishan. Yi Aishan's hand was badly mutilated because he had grabbed the purple lightning fire shield, and there were burn marks on his body. But his appearance and demeanor were still elegant and calm. Faintly smiling, he said, "As everyone knows, the condensation of the heavenly halberd requires the sacrifice of living beings. Of course, the destruction of the heavenly halberd requires it as well. It's not impossible to destroy the heaven halberd with the Avicii Pagoda alone, but it will cause the entire floating island to collapse. I'm afraid we won't even have time to escape to the cultivation land." Although the imperial tutor wants revenge and adheres to the principle of paying his father's debts, in the end, he does not want to implicate too many innocent people, so he chose these living sacrifices to form the Great Disk Formation. He only hopes that it can last for a few more years before the floating island completely collapses. Yi Aishan glanced around and met Luo Yu's gaze. Chapter 38-41. Yi Aishan looked around and met Luo Yu's gaze. He couldn't help but show a gentle expression. "Young Highness, please don't think that Grand Tutor killed the innocent. These people are either the descendants of the culprits who forced young Master to his death, or they are evil and deserve to die." He paused, and his voice became slightly hoarse. Grand Tutor knows that young Master is a kind person. Even if he was treated like this by these beasts, he wouldn't want to implicate the innocent. So, the candidates for the investigation and sacrifice had been decided from the beginning. Yi Qingfeng wasn't being soft-hearted or compassionate. He just didn't want the revenge with Lan Chushi's name to be tainted with too much dirt. He couldn't bear to see that pure and flawless young man be tainted by him. Luo Yu blinked and swallowed the pastry in her mouth. "Oh, I understand the logic, but why do you have to explain it to me?" Yi Aishan smiled and didn't answer her question. Instead, he said, "I hope Young Highness can remember what I just said. You might never understand the reason behind it, but you might know it one day." "Are you kidding me?" Luo Yu originally wanted to ask a few more questions, but Beidang Zhan, Qi Menghui, and Enrich were already shouting hysterically. It's fine that there are direct descendants of the people who killed Lan Chushi in the Three Alliances, but our Baitang clan has only risen for a few thousand years. What does this have to do with us? That's right, our clan is the same. Our Clear Sky sect is also innocent. Yi Asian sneered. Innocent? He grabbed Baitang's father's hair and forced him to raise his head. He gritted his teeth and said, "Ask him, aren't they innocent? And clan, Yi clan, when clan, Baitang clan, your ancestors were all servants of the Lan clan. If it wasn't for Master Lan Xiao's guidance, how could you have the chance to rise? But in the next moment, you betrayed young Master and conspired with the Lan clan's side branch to force young Master into a desperate situation. With the rewards you received from betraying young Master and relying on the new Master, you accumulated little by little, grew stronger, and finally established your own clan. You keep saying that Yi Nu is a dog slave, but weren't you all slaves of the Lan clan before? But at least dogs know how to be grateful. You guys are even worse than dogs." Yi Xuan also kicked the Clear Sky sect's ancestor hard and sneered, "And you, the Clear Sky sect, the Autumn River Pavilion, the Snow-Treading Palace, the Rui sect, you have nothing to do with the Lan family, but you clung to the Empress's Xiao family and bewitched the young Master's maternal family to get a share of the floating island. In the end, you even joined forces with the Yi family, the Xiang family, and the Lu family to force the young Master to agree to bring more people to the floating island. After young Master died, you became the dogs of the Three Alliances and the Xiao family, while establishing your own sect and recruiting disciples. Now that the 8 great sects are famous, have you forgotten how you used to be so servile, kneeling on the ground and begging the young Master to bring you to the floating island? And you guys." Yi Xuan's gaze suddenly turned to Yi Jingqing and the other two. The flames of resentment in his eyes were 100 times fiercer than before. "The 3 of you are the most disgusting scum. Back then, you and my lord became sworn brothers and swore to live and die together, to advance and retreat together. Master really thinks of you as his life and death brothers. Even when you forced him to sacrifice himself, he believed that you had no ill intentions and even entrusted young Master to you before he died." Chapter 3842. But how could Master know that the brother you wholeheartedly supported, who you thought was loyal to, who didn't hide anything, was actually so ugly and dirty in private? How talented is young Master? He won't need 100 years to ascend to the immortal cultivation continent. But you know, with your talent, it's impossible to ascend within 100 years. You're afraid of being left far behind by young Master and Imperial Advisor. You're even more jealous of why young Master can summon the divine beast Bai Zhe and have such talent, while you and your descendants don't. So, you can't even wait to find another way to prevent the floating island from collapsing, so you colluded with everyone to kill him." Yi Xuan's voice choked, and his body trembled uncontrollably. "You bastards don't even know that young Master has already found a way. He went deep into the heaven-mixing abode alone, narrowly escaping death, and found a way to keep the floating island alive without sacrifices. But you didn't wait for him to say it and killed him." She could no longer hold back the tears that rolled down her cheeks. Yi Asian, Yi Ahuang, and Yi Adi's eyes were red, and their hands were clenched into fists. Only Yi Qingfeng's expression remained calm. Yi Zhengqing said angrily, "Nonsense, I don't even know what you're talking about. I only know that you've become a demon, and now you want to kill innocent people, making the entire floating island restless.
Cut the crap.
Today, either you die or we die. We won't allow a demon like you to live, distort black and white, and bring disaster to the world. Everyone, let's kill Yi Qingfeng and save our loved ones."
Kill.
"Kill the demon. We won't allow him to harm our loved ones." Yi Zhengqing shouted, and the people responded one after another. The spiritual power in the Blue Emperor's camp surged wildly. Countless figures gathered from all directions and charged at Yi Qingfeng, Yi Asian, and the others with bone-piercing killing intent. The two sides were in a mess. Yi Qingfeng's side only had 5 people. And the 3 alliances, 6 families, and 8 great sects had more than a dozen experts above the sea-splitting tier. But the direction of the battle was Yi Qingfeng's side gradually gaining the upper hand. Yi Jingqing, Xiang Weiran, and Lu Xingzhan were all at the peak stage of the heaven-shattering tier, just one step away from becoming a mystic immortal. However, these 3 old monsters had been able to live for so long, so how could ordinary shattering heaven-tier cultivators compare to their strength and methods? Mu Yan believed that with her current strength, she had a 70% chance of winning against an ordinary shattering heaven-tier elite. However, if she were to face Yi Jingqing and the other 2, even if she were to fight one-on-one, her chances of winning would be less than 30%. However, even with these 3 old monsters working together, with the help of a few heaven-breaking tier elites, the dozen or so people were forced to retreat again and again by Yi Qingfeng's hands. They were battered and exhausted. The performance of Yi Aishan and the other 3 was far more appalling than that day in Liberty City. Their bodies had expanded several times, and their strength was far from what they had been in the Battle of Liberty City that day. It was as if he didn't care about his own life in battle. Even if he was covered in cuts and bruises, he was determined to kill his opponent. If Yun Ruhan and the others were to fight against the current Heaven, Earth, Xian, and Huang, they wouldn't stand a chance at all. Mu Yan's gaze fell on Yi Aishan and the other 3. She frowned slightly and muttered to herself, "Their cultivation methods are so strange." They were clearly so fierce and explosive, but there seemed to be an aura of death lingering around them that couldn't be dispersed. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.